If you want to understand fighting, you have to begin at the beginning. And the beginning is awareness. Awareness is the perception of a situation, and the situation we're going to talk about is called conflict. All fighting is conflict, but not all conflict is fighting. There are at least three major contexts for conflict: the dominant context, the competitive context, and the non-dominant context. If we want to talk about fighting, the competitive context is what we're interested in. If you want to master fighting, you'll want to master the competitive context. This is what fighting is: competition. In the competitive context, all parties have near equal skill and assets. When one party attempts to overcome the other, this creates struggle. All fighting is a struggle. If there was no struggle, there would be no fight. When two or more parties are in competition, they are pitting their assets and their skills against one another. Assets are the things you rely upon to make something happen. Assets come in many flavors, including internal and external. However, all of these asset types can be summed up by the four major assets. These major assets include power, speed, attrition, and span. Let's look at each of these assets individually. Power is the amount of work that can be done in a single action. Speed is the number of actions that can be made in a given interval. Attrition is the amount of work that can be managed in a given interval. And span is the interval that must be overcome in order to do work. These four major assets tell us what we have to work with and against in competition. These are the tools we'll use in order to overcome our adversaries, and the tools that they will use in order to overcome us. The act of applying these assets is called skill. If you want to master fighting, the first thing you probably think about is skill. Skill is what enables you to apply your assets. In a fight, skill is punching, kicking, throwing, submissions, and holds. With great skill, it may be possible for you to overcome someone with even greater assets than you have. However, this is a slippery slope. In order to better understand the relationship of skills to assets, let's compare them to something you might have a little more familiarity with. Let's compare them to money and your ability to manage it. You probably know that the ability to manage money is very important. A person who is good at managing money can stretch $1 a long way, or even turn $1 into $2. But this skill is always limited by how much money you have. The money you have is like your assets. If you have enough money, managing it becomes much less important, because even if you have poor management skills, you could probably buy everything you want. While skill is very important, it's always limited by how many assets you have. Even the best money manager in the world can't buy more things than Elon Musk, simply because Elon has more money. While skill is very important, it's always limited by assets. When you're in a competitive environment, this fact governs everything. So if you want to master fighting, you should understand that what you are using to compete with is both your skills and assets. And skill is much less dominant than assets. Looking back at our earlier analogy, we could see why assets are so much more important than skill. For example, if you had a ton of money but no skill, you can still get all the things you want. But if you had a ton of skill and no money, you couldn't go anywhere with the skill. This is why a seasoned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt could lose a grappling match to someone with no skill at all, who happened to be one of the strongest men in the world. The assets that are brought to the grappling match by the strongman are much greater than the skill brought by the grappler. So is this all there is to fighting? Simply matching up skills and assets, and whoever has the greatest combination wins? No. There's much, much more to fighting than this. To learn more, check out the next episode.